1692 means we got shots fired at 4:15 ASF.
And another thing I just realized when we were watching the report from Alex Jones, playing those clips, Laura Loomer was not allowed into the Friday press conference. She had been allowed in previously. She was not allowed into Fridays, and I realize it now because Sheriff Lombardo brought up the timeline change of Paddock's arrival between the 25th and the 28th. And if Loomer was in there, she probably would have started screaming and raising hell, and they couldn't have that on national television. So that's why Loomer got banned, and it was obvious watching that for the third time and finally connecting those dots there. But yes, that's right. There were reports of shooters at Bellagio, and you also heard it in the police scanner tape of possible shooters at Bellagio. And I can't even remember, but there was a video that I covered on Friday that was a SWAT team, but I don't remember if that was going through the Bellagio or the Tropicana. So I'm going to have to actually relook into that. But regardless, here is an interview of eyewitnesses at the Bellagio reporting shooters at the Bellagio.
What happened on Sunday night caught the world by surprise, and you were there in Vegas, but you weren't at the concert. So if you could just start walking the audience through where you were at, what you were doing, and what transpired while you were there.
Well, you know, first of all, I think what needs to be said is that, you know, there were, from my perspective and what I know, there were multiple events that occurred around Las Vegas, up and down the Strip that night. It wasn't just, you know, centralized at Mandalay as it has sort of been put forward in all the stories that people are hearing. I mean, if I were to kind of say one statement about everything I'm about to talk about, it's, you know, my wife and I, we were in Vegas celebrating our 10th year anniversary, and on October 1st we were involved in an incident with an active shooter at the Bellagio, and there's no mistake in my mind about that. This is something that happened, and we were there. So we were leaving. We had just seen the Cirque du Soleil show at the Bellagio there. It closed just after, I believe, about 11 o'clock, you know, just outside of 11, maybe about 11:10 local time. And we were walking through the casino. My wife stopped off to use the washroom, and then we decided we were going to continue through the lobby of the Bellagio. There's the beautiful ceiling, the flowers sculpture that's on the ceiling, and then they've got like a conservatory, like a gardens on the other side of the lobby there. So we crossed through the lobby under the famous flower sculpture, and we entered the conservatory. And at that point, you know, people were standing around. Everybody had like cocktails in hand. They were kind of just hanging out. It was a very kind of jovial atmosphere at that point. You know, a big show had just let out. A lot of the audience had come out and sort of followed the same path. So people had they had a wonderful night. My wife and I included. And so we were taking photos in the conservatory, and all of a sudden there was just like this crescendo of screams that started behind us in the lobby, and you could just hear screams. That's the first thing I heard were these screams, and then I heard somebody yell, there's a shooter, and then I heard distinctly like 5 or 6 pops, like pop 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 pop, like unmistakably gunfire, unmistakably. It wasn't flip-flops on the floor, it wasn't, you know, the fountains outside. These were from right outside of that lobby area, and they were very distinct. I mean, I haven't been close enough to a gunshot previously to be able to conclusively say 100% that was gunfire. But in my mind, that's what a gun sounds like. From everything I've heard on, you know, on television and in the movies and things of that nature, that's a gunshot. Those were gunshots. So that happened, and that was about 11:20 when we heard the shots and the screams and people yelling, and then, as I said, somebody yelling that there was a shooter. So I reached back, because there were, at that point, you could just hear the screams and see hundreds of people coming towards us through the conservatory, through the lobby there. You could just see them coming. So I reached back, I grabbed onto my wife's hand, and we just started moving. At that point, we didn't know what was happening. It was the unknown factor. Like, was there a team of people coming towards us? Was there one guy? Like, what was the actual event that had occurred? Like, who was shooting and where were they coming from? So we just started running. We just started going along with everyone else. And I mean, I tell you, there's no scarier moment that I've experienced in my life, because I thought at that point, I was like, this is it. Like, how are we going to get out of this? Like, this is the end. Like, we're gonna die here tonight.
So there is another eyewitness testimony, this one claiming shooter at the Bellagio after the Vegas massacre, after, he said, 11:20. That's over an hour after the official story says the shooting stopped from the Mandalay Bay into the Harvest 91 Festival. Now, we also went back and found this video that I had covered previously. This is, we don't need to have the audio, but if you find the B-roll, there was also SWAT team. It was at the Tropicana. A very awkward, mind you, SWAT team going through the Tropicana around the same time of the Vegas massacre. And I say it's an awkward SWAT team because they're not in uniform, at least they're not matching. And it's very strange. There's these two gentlemen behind them, and you think, okay, maybe that's private security for them, but then they break away from them at the end. There's a weird case they're talking about. He has a walkie-talkie, and then there's some weird guy in the middle with a stretcher. So, again, I don't know. It's just more weirdness, more questions, and more things that it seems to be that they're covering up. And you would think that they would at least want to mention shooters at Bellagio, because you've heard the FBI and the Las Vegas Police Department both say, here's our tip line, call us. We want to hear from eyewitnesses. We want to hear from people that might have facts and details that can help in this investigation. But I don't know if that guest on the Confessionals podcast, reposted at Infowars.com, has spoken to the FBI or anyone investigating this. The eyewitnesses that I've spoken to have said, no, in fact, I haven't. So, I don't know. Do they try to call? Do they try to help with the investigation? Why wouldn't that person that was on the Confessionals podcast saying shooter at the Bellagio after the Mandalay Bay be of interest to the FBI and the Las Vegas Police Department? You would think that would be of high interest, and you would think that there would obviously be multiple eyewitnesses of that. But nothing. We don't hear anything. So we're going to take your calls on the